A young mother of two was found dead in her own beauty salon. Police worked through suspect after suspect. Her husband, a man already in prison. Every lead died. 10 years passed. Nothing. Then a car pulled into an auto shop for an oil change. That's it. That's how this one broke. Not a task force, not new technology. A mechanic looked at a 19-year-old girl's face and couldn't stop staring. Here's what happened. 8:30 p.m., Roebuck, South Carolina. A town small enough that people still leave their doors unlocked. A woman stands outside a beauty salon, waiting on a ride. Inside, the lights go dark. Then, thumping. Rhythmic. Coming from somewhere in the building. A crash. A man comes through the side window. Not the door. The window. She has no phone. She runs to the nearest house, screaming for someone to call 911. Halfway there, she passes within 2 feet of him. Close enough to see his eyes. 20 minutes earlier, she'd waved through that same window at the woman inside, sweeping the floor, closing up for the night. By the time police arrive, she's not sweeping anymore. Whatever the officers found in that back room, it stayed with this town for a decade. And the man who went out the window instead of the door kept living in Roebuck, walking the same streets, for 10 more years, before anyone said his name to police who could do anything with it. This is how they finally did. Before she was a case file, Dana Satterfield was a woman trying to build a life in a town most people have never heard of. Born Dana Chilene Fowler, November 16, 1967, Spartanburg County, South Carolina. Close-knit family. The kind of place where everybody eventually crosses paths with everybody else. A fact that would matter more than anyone could have guessed on the night she died. People who knew Dana used the same words. Warm, kind, easy to love. She remembered your kid's name, asked about your mother, meant it when she said, "Let me know if you need anything." By her 20s, half of Roebuck had probably sat in her chair. She trained as a hairstylist after high school. It wasn't just a job. Clients kept coming back, not just for the haircut, but for the 20 minutes of conversation that came with it. She married young, a man named Mike. They settled in Roebuck and had 2 kids, a daughter, a son. She was saved. Cut hair in someone else's chair, built towards something of her own. Eventually she got there, the Roebuck Hair and Tanning Center, a converted mobile home off Highway 221, pink trim, a hand-painted sign out front. Not glamorous. Didn't need to be. It was hers. She stayed open late for clients who couldn't make regular hours. Never seemed to mind. That was Dana. She'd rather stay an extra hour than turn someone away. By summer 1995, she was 27. Her marriage to Mike had hit a rough patch. They were living separately, nothing formally filed. She had an appointment with a divorce attorney for the first week of August. But people close to both of them described something softer than a marriage ending. Still talking, still trying, for the kids' sake, to find a way back. She never got the chance to find out if they would. Monday, July 31st, 1995. An ordinary weeknight. Working late, finishing a client, laundry in the dryer. Getting ready to close up, go home, start it all again tomorrow. She had no way of knowing it was her last one. Her daughter was 8 that summer. Her son was 6. Neither one old enough to understand what gone meant yet. They'd spend the next 10 years growing up around a question the adults around them couldn't answer. Hold on to this version of Dana. Not the crime scene, not the case file. A 27-year-old who built something out of nothing, who made people feel cared for, who had 2 kids waiting for her to come home. She never made it. Monday, July 31st, 1995, unfolded like any other day at the Roebuck Hair and Tanning Center. Right up until the last 30 minutes. 6:30 p.m. A regular client, Patty Taylor, comes in for a late appointment. Easy conversation. The kind that happens 100 times a week in a shop like this. 6:50. A door-to-door saleswoman, Diane Harris, stops by. Sells Dana a bottle of all-purpose cleaning fluid. Small, forgettable. It won't stay that way. 8:10. Patty's finishing up. Dana offers to walk her out. Patty tells her not to bother. Dana says she'll stay anyway. She's got a load of laundry going. Wants to finish it before locking up. A load of laundry. 10 more minutes. The kind of choice nobody thinks twice about, because nobody has any reason to. Patty leaves. Dana stays behind, alone, closing up. Around 8:10, 8:15, Diane Harris walks past the salon window again, waiting nearby for her ride. She glances in. Dana's sweeping the floor. Their eyes meet through the glass. They wave. Completely unremarkably normal. It's also the last time anyone sees Dana Satterfield alive. Diane's ride is late. She waits close by. Minutes pass. She looks back at the salon. The lights are off now. Then she hears it. A dull, rhythmic thumping from inside the building. Not a scream. Not obviously a struggle. Just wrong. Then the crash. A man, young, white, gray t-shirt, jeans, comes through the side window and hits the ground running. Diane has no phone. She sprints for a neighboring house, screaming for someone to call 911. Somewhere in that run, she passes within a couple of seconds of the man who just came through the window. Close enough to see his face. Then he's gone. Around the same time, a driver named Michael Crook passes the salon. He sees a woman running, Diane, and, separately, a white male crouched near the building, glancing over his shoulder like he's checking if anyone saw him. Crook doesn't think much of it. He has no idea what's happening a few feet away. 9 p.m. Deputy Burnett arrives. Given the call, a break-in, a man fleeing through a window, he's probably expecting the ordinary version of this. A busted window, a stolen register. He walks through the front with his flashlight. Nothing looks disturbed. The register's untouched. Over $200 sitting in plain view. Ignored. Whatever happened here, it wasn't a robbery. He moves toward the back. Toward the washroom. He finds Dana. Part of her clothing was removed. Bruising, abrasions, evidence of a fight for her life. A ligature around her neck, tied off, leaving her hanging just barely off the floor. Roebuck is small, barely 2,000 people. The officers recognize her almost immediately. Not an anonymous victim. Dana, the woman who cut half the town's hair. The autopsy confirms it. A fractured hyoid bone, manual strangulation or a tightly applied ligature. Cerebral hemorrhaging. Abrasions across her face and skull. She'd been beaten, likely into semi-consciousness, before the strangulation. She'd also been sexually assaulted. A forensic light source picked up fluorescence on her body. During the autopsy, technicians recovered a semen sample from pubic hair combings. That sample gets sealed, logged, stored by the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. It will sit there, untouched, for the next decade. Investigators rule out robbery almost immediately. The untouched cache makes that clear. What they're looking at is something more personal. Rage. Obsession. Maybe both. By morning, word is through all of Roebuck. People who never lock their doors start locking them. Parents who let their kids walk to the store alone stop letting them. Here's what investigators know in the first 24 hours. A young white male, roughly 5'9", gray t-shirt, jeans, seen fleeing the salon around 8:30 p.m. 2 witnesses, Diane Harris, Michael Crook, independently corroborating each other. He went out a side window instead of an unlocked front door that was closer and easier. Here's what they don't know. His name. His face, beyond a rough composite sketch built from a few terrified seconds. Her son was 6. They were about to spend the next 10 years finding out what gone means, while the man who did this kept living in the same town, walking the same streets, known to no one but himself. Most of the paths investigators followed next would lead nowhere at all. In any murder case, investigators start close to home. Statistically, it's the safest bet. Most homicides aren't strangers. In Dana Satterfield's case, there was an obvious name at the top of the list. Her husband, Mike. They'd been living apart for weeks. Not divorced, not yet, but separated, with a meeting already booked with a divorce attorney for the first week of August. To detectives in those first hours, that timeline looked heavy. A marriage falling apart. The period around a separation is statistically one of the most dangerous windows for the person leaving. So Mike became the focus. Then came physical evidence that seemed to seal it. In the back washroom, on the water heater the ligature had been tied to, investigators found a fingerprint. They ran it. It matched Mike. For a moment, the case must have felt over. It started falling apart almost as fast as it came together. Mike told detectives exactly where he'd been. 15 miles away, picking up his kids from a friend's house. His kids confirmed it, independently, without prompting. The man seen fleeing the salon was younger, leaner, a different build entirely. Investigators had a hard time picturing Mike squeezing through that window at all. And the fingerprint had an explanation. Mike had installed that water heater himself. Plumbing, fixtures, the small jobs a husband does for his wife's business, even one he's separated from. Touching it wasn't evidence of a crime. It was evidence of a repair job from months, maybe years, earlier. He took a polygraph. No signs of deception. Piece by piece, it dissolved. Wrong build, airtight alibi, confirmed by his own kids. A fingerprint older than the murder. And investigators learned something else. Dana and Mike were still on decent terms. Still talking. Still trying, for their kids, to see if there was a way back. Detectives ruled him out. Here's the uncomfortable part. It wasn't wasted time, exactly. They had to rule him out, and doing it right was the responsible move. But it was time. Days spent confirming an alibi, running a polygraph, verifying a repair record. Days not spent chasing the man who actually did it. In the hours right after a murder, when memory is freshest and evidence hasn't degraded, every hour counts. A real chunk of those hours went to a man with nothing to do with it. Meanwhile, the evidence that actually mattered sat in a locker. A semen sample, combed from Dana's hair, collected properly, sealed properly, sent to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division exactly the way it should have been. But a DNA sample in 1995 wasn't the same as a suspect. CODIS barely existed, and it wouldn't have mattered anyway. The man who left that sample had no prior felony conviction. Nothing on file for any system, even a working one, to find. So detectives had, in effect, a fingerprint with no hand to match it to. Proof of guilt with no name attached. What they had instead was a composite sketch. A young white male, gray t-shirt, jeans, built from two people's brief glimpses of a man running in the dark. They distributed it, canvassed, chased every call from someone who thought they recognized the face. None of it led anywhere. They went back through Dana's appointment book, confirmed Patty Taylor's visit, confirmed Diane Harris's timeline, confirmed that Dana was likely attacked almost immediately after Patty left, dragged into the back room within minutes of being alone. Knowing how it happened, and knowing who did it, were two different problems. Mike Satterfield went home, cleared, but tied to a case that would follow his family for the next 10 years. Somewhere else in Roebuck, the man who actually did it kept living his life. Working, walking around, in plain sight. Detectives turned their attention to a vehicle a witness had spotted near the salon that night. That lead would take them somewhere unexpected too, just not to the truth. With Mike cleared, investigators were back where they started. A composite sketch, a description, and a DNA sample with no name on it. One lead was left, the vehicle. A witness named Ken had driven past the salon that night and noticed something off. The lights inside were dark, but Dana's car was still parked out front. Near a neighboring business Ken knew was already closed, he saw a man standing next to a vehicle, a white and blue Ford Bronco. The man looked nervous, stared at Ken with an edge to it, until Ken drove past. Around 8:40 p.m., just after the estimated time of the murder. It wasn't much. Ken couldn't say for certain the man was connected to anything, but it was, at that point, the only lead left. Police pulled records on similar vehicles. A few names surfaced. Worth a second look isn't the same as provable, and none of them ever crossed that line. Investigators couldn't clear these men completely, couldn't build a case against them either. The kind of dead end that's almost worse than no lead at all, because it keeps you circling back without ever getting anywhere new. Months passed, then more. The feeling inside the department shifted, quietly, the way it does, from "we will catch him" to something closer to doubt. Cases don't announce the moment they go cold. They just stop generating leads until nobody's actively chasing anything anymore. For Roebuck, that stretch was its own kind of torment. Everyone knew whoever did this was still out there, still walking around, maybe still one of them. So the town did what it could. The Ford Bronco stuck in people's minds. For months, every time someone spotted a white and blue Bronco, they called 911. Even Dana's kids got pulled in, 8 and 6 years old, and they knew what vehicle police were looking for. At a stoplight, in a parking lot, they'd tell their father. None of those calls led anywhere either. Then, months after the murder, a call came from inside a South Carolina jail. An inmate said his cellmate, Russell Quinn, might have been involved. Quinn talked about Dana constantly, the inmate said, kept saying how beautiful she'd been. claimed to have had a photograph of her. Once, I said something close to an admission. Investigators dug in. Quinn had been free at the time of the murder. He was now locked up for a sexual assault, where he'd tied his victim to a tree. Dana had been tied to a water heater. He drove a vehicle similar to the Bronco. His face matched the composite sketch. They built a photo lineup. Brought it to Diane Harris. She pointed to Russell Quinn. For the first time in years, the case had momentum. A jailhouse tip, a matching MO, a similar vehicle, an eyewitness ID. They sent Quinn's DNA to the lab. It wasn't a match. Science doesn't lie, one investigator said later. Everything that had pointed at Quinn, the tip, the MO, the vehicle, the ID, evaporated in one lab result. Something broke after that. Not officially, quietly. The leads that felt promising had all been chased and eliminated. The sketch sat unmatched. The DNA sat waiting for a suspect no system could find yet. The case went cold, fully. The kind of cold where information stops arriving, and the file just moves further back in the drawer. For Dana's family, that decade was its own slow grief stacked on the first one. Her kids got old enough to understand exactly what happened to their mother, and old enough to understand nobody had been caught. Even Ashley and her brother, who'd once watched for Ford Broncos with a child's faith that justice was coming, eventually stopped believing it was. 10 years. A name nobody had. A DNA sample nobody could match. A killer is still walking around Roebuck. It would come from a 19-year-old girl getting her car serviced at an auto shop, and a mechanic who couldn't stop staring at her face. By 2005, Roebuck had changed the ordinary way small towns do over a decade. New businesses. Old ones gone. Kids grow. Dana Satterfield's daughter, Ashley, 8 years old the night her mother was murdered, was 18 now. I am a freshman in college, and, by every account, the spitting image of a mother she barely remembered clearly anymore. One afternoon, Ashley pulled into a local auto shop. Nothing unusual. A routine oil change. She waited outside while the mechanics worked, and one of the men on shift couldn't stop looking at her. Not like that. He was staring at a face he recognized. A face he hadn't thought about consciously in years, but had never actually stopped thinking about. He said it out loud to his coworkers. She looks a lot like Dana Satterfield, the woman who was murdered 10 years back. Another mechanic told him, casually, not knowing what it would do to the man standing next to him, that the girl outside actually was Dana Satterfield's daughter. He went still. His name was Michael Pace, and what almost nobody around him knew, what he'd carried, silently, for a full decade, was that he'd known Dana's killer personally. Ridden in his car the night of the murder, heard him say, hours before Dana died, exactly what he planned to do. 10 years earlier, at 17, Michael had called the police anonymously. More than once. A few months after the murder. Again after the case aired on national television. Once in person to an officer he ran into at a bowling alley. Same message every time. Look at Jonathan Vick. Every time. No name. Investigators had tried to act on it. Confirmed Jonathan Vick's mother owned a blue and white Ford Bronco. Confirmed Jonathan had access, had been driving it that evening. Should have been enough to bring him in. Vick's mother, Mary Ann, refused. Flatly. Wouldn't let the police speak to him. Wouldn't let them touch the vehicle. Told them he had nothing to do with it and to leave her family alone. And because the tip came from an anonymous caller, no name, no sworn statement, a judge had no grounds to force it. You can't compel someone to surrender DNA based on an unnamed voice on a phone. It has to be attributable. Someone willing to stand behind it, in the open, under oath. Without that, detectives had nowhere to go. They backed off. Not disbelief. The law gave them no other choice. For 10 years, Jonathan Vick lived his life in plain sight, while the one person who might have forced the issue stayed silent, out of fear. Here's what Michael had never told anyone. The night of the murder, Jonathan gave him a ride home in that Bronco. Mentioned, almost casually, that he was planning to get his hair done that night. Already late for a haircut, which struck Michael as strange. Jonathan clarified, not really for the haircut. To see Dana. Both of them knew her. Jonathan started talking about how beautiful she was. Said he wanted to have sex with her. Michael laughed it off. 10-year age gap. Sounded like a joke. The kind of thing a teenage boy says to sound bold. Jonathan didn't take it well. Snapped back. You don't think I can do it? with an edge that made it feel like something else. Michael let it drop. The next day, news broke. Dana Satterfield, murdered. Michael didn't want to believe it. Then police announced they were looking for a white Ford Bronco, the exact vehicle Jonathan had been driving him around in the night before. Then it got worse. Jonathan told him, directly, that he'd kill him if he ever repeated what he'd said that night. That's the moment Michael's silence stopped being a choice. 17 years old, sitting on knowledge that could break a murder case wide open, terrified that speaking up would get him killed too. So he called anonymously. Again and again, whenever the guilt got too heavy. Every time, the same answer. Without your name, there's nothing we can do. 10 years is long enough for fear to calcify into habit. A decision you made so long ago, it just feels like the only option left. Then Ashley Satterfield walked into an auto shop for an oil change. Michael Pace, 27 now, the same age Dana was when she died, felt something shift. He thought about what it must have been like for Ashley and her brother, growing up a decade without their mother, without answers. He thought about Jonathan Vick, still out there, still free, still capable of doing this again. He called the police, again, and when they told him what they'd told him every time before, that without a name, there was only so much they could do, he didn't hang up. He gave them his name, the ride home in the Bronco, the comment about getting his hair done, what Jonathan wanted to do to Dana, the threat at the pool hall, the same story he'd told anonymously for 10 years. Except now it had a face attached, a name, someone willing to say it under oath, no matter what it cost him. For the first time in 10 years, the case had something it never had before, a witness willing to stand behind what he knew. A sworn statement changes what a legal system can do. That's the part most people miss about anonymous tips versus named witnesses. It was never that the police didn't believe Michael Pace for 10 years. Belief isn't enough. The law needs something that survives a defense attorney tearing it apart. For the first time, Michael had given them exactly that. With his statement on record, prosecutors went to a judge for something they'd been legally barred from for a decade, a non-testimonial identification order, compelling Jonathan Vick to hand over DNA and fingerprints. This time, the judge signed it. By 2005, Jonathan Vick wasn't the 17-year-old from a decade earlier. He lived half an hour away, in Greenville. 2 years in the Marine Corps, ended largely because of his temper, clashed with coworkers, supervisors, fired job after job for the same reason. He couldn't control himself around authority. Now he has a wife, a young daughter. On paper, he didn't look like a monster. No serious record. 2 arrests, vandalism, and domestic violence, both dropped before trial. To anyone who didn't know what Michael Pace knew, he looked like an ordinary guy having a hard time. Investigators sent his DNA to the lab. After Russell Quinn, a suspect who'd checked every circumstantial box and still come back negative, nobody let themselves feel certain. Not yet. The results came back. The semen recovered from Dana Satterfield's body in 1995 belonged to Jonathan Vick. 10 years, 2 months, and a chain of events that started with a scared teenager and ended with a stranger's oil change. Finally, a name attached to the DNA that had sat untouched since the summer Dana died. Jonathan Vick was arrested. Murder, kidnapping, first-degree criminal sexual conduct. Walking to the police car in front of cameras, he said one thing: "I love my wife and my daughter. That's all that matters." Not a denial, not an explanation, just that. He denied any involvement in the questioning that followed, claimed he hadn't even known Dana. The evidence said otherwise. 6 days before the murder, on July 25, 1995, Vick's mother had called the salon, trying to book him a quick appointment. A friend of Dana's, Darlene Reeves, happened to be there and overheard it. Dana, frustrated afterward, told Reeves she wasn't going to accommodate the request. She didn't have time. She sounded pressured. It's a small detail most retellings leave out. It matters. Jonathan Vick wasn't a stranger who picked her salon at random. He knew her. His mother had been pushing to get him in her chair less than a week before he killed her. And Dana, without knowing why, had pushed back. Investigators believe that rejection may be exactly what set July 31st in motion. Piecing the timeline together, witness testimony, physical evidence, Vick's own later words, detectives reconstructed it. He drove to the salon in his mother's blue and white Bronco, the one with the unusual saw blade rims that a local worker named Jerry Mills had spotted parked illegally near the building just before dusk. He used a haircut as the excuse to get inside, likely arriving not long after Patty Taylor left. At some point, he made a move. Dana may have thought he was joking, or turned him down flat. Either way, something in that exchange triggered him. He locked the front door, turned off the lights, attacked her. Beaten into semi-consciousness, dragged into the back washroom, sexually assaulted, strangled with a ligature, tied off to the water heater. One detail investigators still couldn't fully explain, the same detail that ended up unraveling his own escape, was why he went out the side window instead of the front door. The front was unlocked. Closer. If he'd walked out calmly and gotten in his car, there's a real chance no one notices him at all. No Diane Harris getting a look at his face, no composite sketch, no two eyewitnesses corroborated each other for 10 years. Instead, he panicked, went out the window, made enough noise to be heard outside, put himself directly in the path of the one witness who'd spend the next decade being the person most likely to identify him. The moment police finally had a name to show her. As prosecutors dug into Vic's history, preparing for trial, they found something that didn't just add color. It suggested something darker underneath. In 2002, 3 years before his arrest, Jonathan Vick was engaged to a young woman named Heather Sellers. That fall, the engagement fell apart. 2 weeks later, Heather Sellers vanished. We'll come back to her. For now, prosecutors had what they needed to build the strongest case they could actually prove. Michael Pace's sworn testimony, a DNA match at 1 in 900 million, a corroborating vehicle sighting, and a jailhouse confession still to come. Trial was set for November 2006. He still insisted he was innocent. A jury wouldn't need very long to disagree. By November 2006, more than 11 years had passed since Dana Satterfield's murder. Her daughter, 8 the night her mother died, was 23 now. Her son was 21. Both had grown up inside the shadow of a case that, for most of their childhood, felt like it would never end. Prosecutors Trey Gowdy and Barry Barnett built their case on two things few defenses can withstand: forensic science and direct human testimony from people who'd watched it happen in real time. The DNA formed the spine of it, a match to Jonathan Vick at 1 in 900 million. For all practical purposes, zero chance of coincidence. But DNA doesn't tell a jury why. That came from the witnesses. David Michael Pace took the stand. The ride home in the Bronco. Vick's comment about wanting Dana. The anger when Michael laughed it off. The death threat at the pool hall. Testimony he'd been too afraid to give for 10 years. Finally spoken under oath, in front of the man who once said he'd kill him for it. Jerry Mills testified about the Bronco, the saw blade rims, parked illegally beside the salon just before dusk. A vehicle that stood out, because those wheels weren't common in Roebuck in 1995. Patty Taylor testified about leaving between 8:10 and 8:15, establishing, to the minute, that Dana was alive and alone in the shop right before the attack. Diane Harris took the stand again, more than a decade after she first gave her account. The struggle. The lights are going dark. Vic's face through the window as he ran. Darlene Reeves testified about the phone call 6 days before the murder. Mary Ann trying to book Jonathan an appointment, Dana's frustration afterward. The defense tried to strike it as hearsay. The court disagreed. It wasn't offered to prove the call happened, just that Dana knew who Vic was, and how she felt about him. Then came Steve Vaughn, Vic's cellmate for 8 or 9 weeks in early 2006. Vic told him that if he could take back one day of his life, it'd be the day he went to Dana's salon. Parked the Bronco across the street so her husband wouldn't see it. Went inside. Claimed he blacked out, no memory of the assault itself, but admitted he panicked afterward and went out the window out of fear. In every meaningful sense, a confession, not formal, not to police under caution, just said, casually, to a man Vic never expected to repeat it in a courtroom. The defense went after eyewitness memory across an 11-year gap and tried to get Reeves's testimony thrown out. Neither argument survived a DNA match at 1 in 900 million. 4 eyewitnesses corroborating each other, and a jailhouse admission that lined up with the physical scene. The trial ran 4 to 5 days. The jury deliberated for under 20 minutes. Guilty. All counts. Murder. Kidnapping. First-degree criminal sexual conduct. That's the jury's way of sending a message, one prosecutor said afterward. Less than the time it takes to watch a sitcom. That's how reprehensible we think you are. Vic broke down when the verdict was read, insisted the real killer was still out there, a claim that didn't hold up against 1 in 900 million, 4 eyewitnesses, and his own words to a cellmate. Life for murder. 30 years, consecutive, for criminal sexual conduct. 30 more for kidnapping. He'd been 17 at the time, a minor, so the death penalty was off the table. For Dana's kids, the verdict closed something that had defined nearly their entire lives. 11 years of not knowing. 11 years of watching Ford Broncos at stoplights. Someone was finally held accountable. But Vic's story wasn't finished. Not the legal side. And not the darker one still sitting underneath it, involving a young woman who vanished 3 years before he was ever arrested for anything. Before we get to what happened after the conviction, there's a piece of this story most retellings leave out. Once you hear it, you'll understand why it stuck with investigators for almost 2 decades. In 2002, 3 years before Vic was ever arrested for Dana's murder, he was engaged to an 18-year-old named Heather Renee Sellers. That fall, the engagement fell apart. 2 weeks later, Heather Sellers vanished. Nobody. No confirmed sighting. Nothing. People close to her said she kept seeing Vic even after the engagement ended, right up until she disappeared. The last confirmed sighting of her alive was at a bar, with him. After that night, no one ever saw her again. Her car turned up submerged in a river. She wasn't in it. Friends and family described a troubled relationship, complaints about abuse, control, tension. Because of the timeline, and because of what people close to Heather were telling police, Vic became the primary suspect. Suspicion isn't proof. No body, no physical evidence tying him directly to it. Police couldn't build a case. Heather Sellers' disappearance has never been solved. Search her name today, and the case is still open. Sitting in the same investigative limbo, Dana's case sat in for a full decade before Michael Pace spoke up. While prosecutors prepared for Vic's murder trial, this case sat in the background. Impossible to prosecute, impossible to ignore, harder to ignore after his arrest for Dana's murder. When investigators searching his property found an abandoned car registered in his name. Inside, what looked like hair and bloodstains. Not enough material for a full DNA analysis. No certainty. But the timing, the location, his history, hard for anyone close to the case not to wonder if that car connects to what happened to Heather 3 years earlier. If it does, and there's no way to say that for certain, Dana Satterfield may not have been his only victim. That question has never been answered. It may never be. His violence didn't stop with the 2006 conviction. In April, awaiting trial, he attacked a corrections officer at the Spartanburg County Detention Center, turned belligerent over jail regulations, then lunged and threatened to kill the officer and his entire family. Convicted of that too. 3 more years, upheld on appeal in 2011, after Vic argued a detention officer didn't legally count as a public official under South Carolina law. He also appealed the murder conviction in 2009, challenged Darlene Reeves's testimony, and the legality of a consecutive 30-year kidnapping sentence stacked on top of the murder charge. The Court of Appeals rejected the hearsay argument outright, but agreed on the second point. South Carolina law doesn't allow sentencing for both murder and kidnapping from the same act. The kidnapping sentence was vacated. Everything else stood. Life for murder. 30 years for criminal sexual conduct. 3 more, consecutive, for the assault on the corrections officer. Jonathan Vick is still incarcerated, maximum security. Earliest possible parole, October 24, 2035, pushed back, year after year, by his own violence behind bars. Nothing in his record suggests that date means much. Dana's daughter, Ashley, the young woman whose face in an auto shop finally broke this case open, didn't disappear back into an ordinary life. She became a victim's advocate, works directly with families going through exactly what hers went through, attends bond hearings, helps people write and read their own impact statements in court. She said simply, "You don't get over something like this. You learn to live with it. Helping others through their worst moments is how she does that." Heather Sellers' family is still waiting for their version of an ending. If you know anything, that case is still open with the Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office. Dana Satterfield's case took 10 years, 2 months, and a chance encounter at an auto shop. It took a scared teenager finally becoming a man willing to risk everything to tell the truth. and it left behind a second, still open question about a young woman named Heather, whose family is still waiting. If you found this video interesting and would like to help get it noticed by the algorithm, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Another way you can help is by checking out another one of our videos like this one. Thank you for watching, and be sure to click the video on your screen now for another fascinating cold case investigation.